too many people, they're waiting, they go, anytime now he's gonna start pointing. It's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And then the dog's eating the launcher. People are being penny wise and pound foolish. They're not realizing that not letting that bird go sooner is gonna cost them 10 more to undo what that one rep did. And if it was a wild bird, it would not tolerate a whole lot of pressure from the dog. I point and then that bird scent is just staying in my face. And so that's how I know I'm doing the right thing. This was what I got for pointing. I would leave this alone. I would run my NA test or my VJP or whatever, maybe give them a hunting season. I can shoot birds over that dog and then we'll work on building everything else next training season. Other distractions, can I throw a hat? We do little stuff at first. Just tap on the belly with the E-collar right before I say whoa. And I'm gonna go up one level at a time on this E-collar. The dog's posture is not showing me that she's stressed out by this at all. She's very neutral. She's calm, her tail's down, it's not tucked. This is how I want this to look. So I don't want to have the dog already in a high state of arousal and then give him a command whoa that's also been conditioned in high arousal. I want whoa to bring him down a little bit. This isn't a scenting drill. This is a sight-based drill. I want the dog to see a bird in the air, not smell it, and then that visual, I want to see them stop when they see that bird fly in the air. What we did on the whoa post transfers to the field. So we do whoa, we do belly stim, we do shot, we do flown bird. We do each one of those on the whoa post and then loose in the field. And then we start bringing all those pieces together. When people worry about this is too set up and contrived, it's supposed to be. And I'm trying to teach the dog concepts that I can then just take my dog out and hunt wild game and then see that they apply the concepts they learned in the setups to those different environments. We'll just have him kind of work into the scent cone there. And then all we're looking for this first step is that the dog acknowledges scent. And then as soon as I see that he takes one more step, we're going to let that bird go. And so the idea here is to just incentivize the dog to slow down and become more cautious, to help keep that bird on the ground. And then we're gonna see that kind of turn into a point over a number of repetitions. So he's already kind of far along in this process, so hopefully he does a good job kind of after the first one. The thing that happens a lot when people use remote launchers is I think they forget the entire purpose of them, which is if we're using pen raised birds, pigeons, chucker, whatever, I use a remote launcher so I have control of when that bird leaves. And if it was a wild bird, it would not tolerate a whole lot of pressure from the dog. And so what I see people do a lot with launchers is wait way too long to pop that bird. So what we're gonna try to do as best we can is have the dog work a nice search, and then as soon as I see them acknowledge scent, if they move anymore after that, we're gonna let that bird go, right? That's the most important thing, is you use remote launchers to make pen raised birds act like wild birds. And if we just do that, then this usually goes fine. If we miss that part though, it goes to hell pretty fast.
I generally find that most of the struggles that people have in the steadiness field portion is they don't control the environment, and that's what the launchers especially give you. But like you said, most people kind of mix up. They think it's as a means of making sure the dog doesn't catch the bird. Well, sure, but the timing and even where you place the launcher with the wind direction and everything really makes a huge difference, and being thoughtful on how you're going to actually approach.
You'll see people plant these launchers in really heavy cover sometimes, and then there's just not enough wind pushing through to really create a good scent cone. And you think for the young dogs, we want to set this up to make it as easy for them to do the right thing as they possibly can. So I want a nice big long wide scent cone, and so I'm going to plant it in sparser cover so that the wind is really pushing that scent. That way I can bring them in from further away. That also gives me a lot more steps before they're right on top of that bird, right? So I'll see they acknowledge scent. Most of this is us staying out of the way of the dog, but being able to read them. And so a lot of this setup is about making it easier for me to read what the dog's doing. And so when I see them move and cut really hard, right, we've all seen that, right, where it looks like their nose got hooked on something and then their ass end swings around. That's what we're looking to see. But I just really...
But sometimes that can be really subtle though. Some dogs, you can slam it, but that's also even more emphasis on getting the wind direction and your approach correct, because you can almost encourage or discourage the level of scent or odor that they're exposed to.
It comes from, I think a lot of that, like the initial locking up when we're working on those dogs, it comes from surprise. And so when we can really work them so that they hit a crosswind, right? They hit the scent cone at a 90-degree angle. I think that's where you get the really nice behavior change. So whenever I can make that happen, I will. But then at some point in this process, it's good too to just have the dog basically walking head first into the scent cone so that they can really really start associating, okay, if I don't slow down and get cautious when I hit this scent, then the birds fly, right? So I think that that's really important too. And then the last thing, just from experience, if the only thing you have is pen race chucker, they like to pop out of launchers and just land right on the ground next to the launcher. And the other thing too is even if they have one good flight in them, that's all you get. So then they're gonna set down and the dog can chase them and grab a hold of them. So we try to set launchers up along tree lines if we're using chucker. That way they fly into trees and they don't come back down. So I can try to make it act more like a pigeon if that's all I have.
Yeah, it pays dividends to have pigeons in a game like this, cost-wise, but like you said, we go through all the efforts of setting this up. We're real intentional. The last thing we want is for just a dud bird to fall on the ground and wipe out all of the effort and planning that you've done. It's better to, if you have a flyaway bird, don't be too cautious to press the button. It's a lot easier to reload that launcher than it is to correct some of the mistakes that can be learned by too late of a launch.
Especially when you have homers, when people are showing up at like a NAVDA training day and they bought, each chucker was $11. It's hard to watch that fly away. And I think that's where people are being penny wise and pound foolish, right? They're not realizing that not letting that bird go sooner is going to cost them 10 more to undo what that one rep did. You know, the last thing I think that's just really important with this work is some dogs do like chasing enough that that is a reward. And so with certain dogs, I think we want to see the chase happen. It's an indicator of drive and the dog's desire for the bird. But like with our dogs in particular, a lot of you're going to see me use e-collar to curtail chase. And what I'm trying to do there is shape that behavior. I didn't teach the dog to stop with a collar yet. All I'm doing is just gradually rolling up that dial to just see him peel off of the bird. And then I'll maybe recall him or something, and then we set up another rep. And that these are reps, so I'm not gonna do a whole big field hunt. I want lots of contacts fast, right? So that the dog gets to make a decision, see how that played out, and then get another attempt to make another decision. There's a cadence for every dog when we do this though, where if I let a young dog have too many contacts back to back, we get that bird drunk thing that we've all seen, right? Where we lose control. So that's too much arousal and not enough time to kind of come back down to baseline. So what we're looking for when we're doing this with the dogs is I want to move as fast as I can with these contacts to be efficient with my time and to give the dog like a very quick feedback loop. But if my dog is the type of dog that's really excitable, then I have to take a break in between those reps just to see them calm back down so that they can even use their brain, right, in those situations.
It's just being smart with your allotted time too. If we have 5 minutes, you know, it's 80 degrees here today. You only have a certain amount of reps that you can get with these dogs, effective reps. So why waste your time setting up this big elaborate field search and sequence, and then you're also adding in retrieves and all this other stuff potentially if you're shooting birds, when really all we're trying to work on is consistent point establishment that's going to bleed into steadiness. People wrapping their heads around that to where set it up to where it's in a small area, effective reps. You get a handful of reps potentially. Some dogs may not need it. Like you said, you can kind of pour too much gasoline on that fire.
Sure.
But you can really kind of hone in on exactly what you're trying to work on without worrying about all the other fluff that kind of takes away or can muddy it up. Or how many times do people get distracted and they end up working on something that they were not even intending on working to begin with when they set out.
And it's good to remember exactly what it is you're trying to do in any given training session. So what we're trying to do here is establish point with young dogs. And so anticipation early in a training process is good. So we don't even have to move launchers, right? Like I might bring the bird or the dog back to the same spot over and over. And what you'll see at the beginning sometimes is the dog moves in faster, right? They look like they're turning into a flusher. That's fine. I want them to get more reps of trying that and having it not work. And then we have them lock up. But if they anticipate a bird being there, and that's how we start getting that point happening initially, I'm fine with that. I don't have to do a big run. So when especially if you're training with your buddies and you got a bunch of dogs you're trying to run, they're all similar age, we'll leave all that stuff out there, 3-4 launchers, and then you just run that circuit. Have somebody back plant, run the next dog. And that kind of stuff, just the efficiency becomes really important there. But even if we're just running one dog, I don't think you have to move stuff around a whole bunch unless there seems to really be a need to. Like if the dog is just showing that they're hitting scent and then they're getting faster instead of slowing down, down, then maybe we move stuff around because we need to change the setup a little bit. Right. But for a lot of them, the anticipation, I don't think is a bad thing right now. Yeah. We're not teaching the dog to hunt. They should already be comfortable field searching and know why they're out there. We're trying to just build that caution.
Exactly. There's exposure and intro steps that we've already done. Now we're actually getting into some pointing, going into steadiness. But speaking of efficiency, I don't think the pigeons like us jaw jacking. So we'll get this out of the way and start trapping some more and get to work. Put them in the live well over here.
All right, when we grab pigeons, I just cover the opening with the bag so you're not giving birds as much space to get out. If it's hot, I don't like to put a lot of birds in the bag at the same time because you're crowding them, right? And then I just feel like airflow is a problem, they get hot. So we're just gonna grab 2 right now. We have 2 launchers, so we'll just start with that. And so I'm gonna try to pick a place out here where the grass isn't too tall. That way the scent can kind of get out of that area and we can get a really good scent cone.
How concerned are you about dogs seeing launchers?
I don't like it because everything's a signal to them. And so you get some dogs that are way more visual than they are like scent driven. Even with the hunting dogs will start picking stuff out like that. And we don't really want that to happen. So like this is a good spot here. The cover's low, but it'll be tall enough that, you know, the dog's not gonna see the launcher, but it's not so tall that it's gonna hold scent too much. I don't want it trapping scent like that. And so just putting this bird in the launcher. Make sure you pull your pins. A lot of really otherwise good dog work gets screwed up by people, you know, not pulling pins from their launchers, and then the bird can't flush when it's supposed to, and that's a problem.
Do you use any sort of wind indicator? Obviously we have some tall grass.
I'm gonna put a ribbon up and I'm gonna tie it as high as I can on here. We use orange because dogs can't see orange as well. What I will say is they'll still notice that ribbon kind of flapping in the air. And so if you start seeing that your dog is picking up on that visual, you gotta get rid of them at some point. But again, early on, if we're just trying to establish point, it's more important that I know exactly where the launcher is than it is that the dog sees a ribbon. So we're gonna just not worry about that part right now, and then it will become a problem at some point, and when I see that, then I stop doing this. Usually we can get far enough that the dog's establishing point pretty well, and then we don't have to worry about it. So this I can just see from really far away, and then we won't have too much trouble. What I will do is kind of just try to fluff up stuff around these. I really don't want the dog to see the launcher if I can help it.
So tall enough to conceal it, but short enough to still allow airflow and scent to escape.
Yeah, and what you can usually do, you got some like briars in here, I'm cutting myself up, but what you can usually do is just dig around in the grass to even get down almost to bare dirt. Instead of trying to cover the launcher with other stuff, just move it out of the way so you can really kind of settle it down in there. And you got to think, when you're standing up, you can see this, but this dog we're running is 18 inches, 2 feet tall, so he's not going to be able to see that, right? His angle is a lot lower to the ground, so he can't see from up high. This is a mistake people make in retrieving work a lot too. They're throwing marks and they think the dog can see because they can see, but you're way up high, so you can see down better, right? The dog, all they see is cover a lot of times. So in this case, we're using that to our advantage. We want this to be hidden. In retrieving, when you're building confidence in marks, you want the dog to be able to see more. And so you just have to take their perspective into account when you're doing this stuff. So the other thing is you got to know what number launcher you're using. So I'm just going to double check. This is number 1. And so I'll know that that one is number 1 when we're working, and then we'll find another spot for our second launcher. I'm gonna try to space these out. Like I was saying before, I want them far enough away that the dog has a little bit of time to settle and search again before they hit their second contact, but I don't need to space them out super far because it just takes too much time. So if my dog's, you know, running for a long period of time in between these contacts, especially when it gets hot, then I'm gonna run out of dog a lot faster, and then I just can't be as efficient getting these contacts this way. So even this is a lot taller, but it's, oh, nice.
There's your rabbit track.
Yeah. So this is taller, but it's still sparse enough that it's not gonna hold scent too much. So I'm gonna kind of put this again down here. I'll move some of this out of the way after I load a bird in this launcher. We'll just kind of try to get it set down there so you can't see too well. If I have to rip grass to just hide it a little bit more, then I will. So we'll move some of this stuff out of the way. Yeah, see, like you get another 6 inches down if you just move the grass out of the way, and then this will stay relatively concealed, and then I can just kind of pull this back up around it. All right, that's it. So we'll go grab Toad and take him for a walk.
See how froggy Toad feels today.
Toad down. All right, so we're gonna run him. He does have an e-collar on. We're gonna just curtail chase a little bit. If he's a younger dog, I would let that stuff go. But at a certain point, I wanna take away the fun of chasing, because if he puts a bird up and then he gets to engage in fun chasing, then for me, at some point, that's reinforcing the opposite behavior of what we're looking for, right? Toad heel. And then we try to always do some obedience. All right, come on, Goofy. Here, heel. Some obedience before we do any of this drivey stuff. That way, obedience is how you get to do the fun stuff, instead of it being, obedience is what I use to keep you from doing the fun stuff.
So obedience is the gateway to getting what he actually really wants to go do.
Correct. And so I find that people use obedience to try to control drive, instead of obedience being how we allow, like that's the avenue that the dog has to pursue in order to be able to express drive. What I am gonna do with him is let him run a bit first and air out. I want him to pee and poop if he hasn't, and I want him to get some of these initial beans out before we actually bring him around to encounter these birds. So we're gonna go down and loop back around. Good boy, hunt him up.
Rabbit.
Yeah. German dog problems.
Now, what do you have to say for the bird dog peoples that say never let your pointing dog chase fur?
Our dogs are bred to do that. And so I would say it probably takes them longer to get everything figured out, what I'm supposed to point and what I'm allowed to chase, but they do figure it out. I think that a lot of people talk about how smart their dogs are, and then they do all this stuff that to me, or make these rules that to me seem like they're saying their dog's not all that smart. So my dog can tell the difference between a bird and a bunny, and then I can, if I have those two different visual and scent signals, I can create different rules for each of those situations. So we let our dogs chase rabbits. They bark when they chase them, and then that makes it easy for me to have a safe shot when I'm shooting stuff on the ground in front of my dog, and my dogs point birds. So I don't know, works out okay for us. And I've had a lot of really bad bird hunts turn into really good bunny hunts. Just gonna steer him a little bit because he's joyriding now. The biggest thing about this is I'm not saying whoa at this point. He doesn't know what whoa is. I just want this interaction to be between him and the bird. Until I'm even in gunshot range, I don't want to do anything that creates a dependency on me for a situation where I'll never be there, right? When that stuff happens. So I need him to believe that he controls what happens with the bird and that I'm not really involved in that at all. What I find with young dogs too is that when they're in new places, you see that they don't have the confidence that they have in places where they know they're finding birds. Okay, so he just hit scent. And now when he takes another step, that bird flies, right? And now I can grab my e-collar if I need to restrain chase. Toad here. Heel. 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 No, sir. Heel. Good. A little bit of water there, buddy. So as soon as he takes that extra step after he's established point, then that's when the bird flies. And that's what I want him to think, is I need him to start saying there's cause and effect here. When I put pressure on that bird, it left. The reward right now for him is the game's still in play, right? I still have a bird on the ground. And so I could still win this. There's our second one, still moving. So I'm gonna pop that one too. There's no such thing as too early. There's no such thing as launching a bird too early unless the dog doesn't see the bird. We want the dog to see the bird and associate their behavior of moving in on the bird. We want them to believe that they caused that to happen, right? For the bird to leave. So in order for them to understand that, they have to see the bird go. Besides that, you can't possibly launch it too early, right? Wild birds are not going to tolerate pressure. It doesn't matter if he came in on the wrong side of the wind. If he's too close to that bird, we launch it, right? I want him to see birds fly. That's how we get the caution, right? Too many people, they're waiting. They go, anytime now he's going to start pointing. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then the dog's eating the launcher, you know, at that point, they're right on top of it. So we don't want that to happen. The other thing people worry about is having to proof dogs off launchers. You just leave empty launchers in the field when you start putting loose birds planted down, and then they figure that stuff on their own. So like he just ran past that launcher. There's still plenty of bird scent there. They start understanding there's a bird on the ground or this is old scent. They start isolating launcher scent, all that stuff. So I think you don't have to worry too much about that. Just leave that stuff out in the field later on in your process. So we'll grab like 2 more birds for him and do the same thing, and then we'll pull another dog out and do it too.
Anything bird dog related, our friends Kat and Ethan over at Standing Stone Supply have you covered. Whether it's bumpers, launchers, med kits, or even pigeons, they'll get you taken care of. If you need to know how to use the equipment, they have you covered in that department as well. They have the complete step-by-step training courses, no matter which type of bird dog you're trying to train. So the next time you're in the market for anything bird dog training related, be sure to go see standingstonesupply.com. Use code GDIY at checkout to save 15%. Now let's get back to the video.
Here. Good man. All right, replant launchers and do the same thing. That's the other thing too, is like we're doing all this setup stuff. This stage, if I have a choice, I'm just gonna hunt my dog on wild birds, and I will not even do this whole step that we're doing, you know?
This is kind of born out of necessity more so than desire in a lot of ways.
Yeah, where we live, we get woodcock when they're there. You know, there's some resident birds, but that's kind of it. Well, there's grouse too, but you're still traveling. That's not the thing I can just do every weekend or on a weeknight.
Right.
So, because of that last one, how close he got, like now we're seeing the same problems here, is he's just roading in on birds. And it's okay, it's just gonna take a number of repetitions to undo the mistake I made. But this is a trainer problem, not a dog problem, right? I caused this, so I have to fix it.
What do you say to the people that say just nick the dog, be done with it?
Well, for young dogs, I don't want to associate any electronics with scent, like a bird still being on the ground, because you run into this problem with e-collar called superstitious associations, where the dog doesn't think the reason they felt stimulation is the same as why you stimulated them, right? So if they think birds are electric, then you can create an aversion to birds. That's how you create blinking problems. He picked up scent from back here, I'm pretty sure, but we're gonna let him work.
He picked up scent back there.
We're gonna let him work into this, right? Because that's pretty far. I want him to feel pretty comfortable and confident for where it is. We'll let him work this out. He's flagging a little bit, so I don't want to beat him up too much for that. So every repetition is going to be a little bit different. He hit that scent from pretty far away, but I just want to see a level of certainty from him that he feels like he's got it pinned down. And I didn't really feel I had that until he got kind of up here. And then what you see is me walking in. That's what actually got him to take that last step, and I want to launch the bird. For most of the stuff that we're doing, the NAVDA and JGHV tests, like this level of pointing for a puppy test is fine. We'll keep trying to tighten this up. And then what I would like to see is just he lets me get in gun range reliably before he's breaking, which like that's a shootable bird, right? So if I get that every time, then for me, this is where I stop my pointing work for a puppy. And then I'm gonna maybe run them in the VJP or the NA test. And then we're gonna go work on other things that are more about go and be independent and be confident and not about restraining or capping drive. So we would do this pointing and then we're gonna stop field work. We're gonna do our force fetch. We're gonna do all of our retrieve work. So building our duck search and all that kind of stuff. The things where I don't want the dog showing any real restraint, right? So I want to work on that stuff next. And then after all that's built up, then we would come back and do the rest of the steadiness sequence. So we bring gunners in and we start working on flush, shot, and fall, like the dog being steady to those pieces. But there's a lot of work that needs to happen between where this part ends and that stuff begins. Because if I'm trying to teach the dog, go, be independent, pursue game, at the same time that I'm saying, don't do this. Yes, they can understand different contexts, but it's harder for them to learn those things at the same time. So we try to sequence them, and then eventually we'll have everything happening correctly and in the proper contexts. This last one here, if this was what I got for pointing, I would leave this alone. I would run my NA test or my VJP or whatever, maybe give him a hunting season. I can shoot birds over that dog, and then we'll work on building everything else up over that winter and prep for next training season. Rainer heel. That is not a heel, and thank you for muscle punching Nick in the face. All right. Huddle up.
And this is why you do a little air out before going straight into your field.
I feel so much lighter now. There we go. Rainer.
Not right now, Dad. I'm smelling rabbit.
So I'm gonna try, because that launcher's down here and I know which way the wind's going, I'm gonna try to put him in a position where he's pretty far downwind of the bird. So we're just gonna angle this way to help steer him that way. Whenever he decides to stop hunting behind us. Old scent, that's where the launcher was before we moved it. So we're gonna go up the collar little by little until I just see him peel off like that. So that's all the control I want, right? I just peel them off. So we started at a 5 or 6 on a Dogtra collar. I got up to a 20 when he finally peeled off. But I want to save some of this momentum. So he stretched out a little bit. I want to keep that. So there, not good wind, right? He hit scent way back here. Let me get my dog before I, Good. So he hit scent back here, and then he's kind of working his way through. But when he actually, he gets out of scent and he tries to come back in, then he's right on top of the bird. So that's a situation where I'm not going to try to turn nothing into something. I mean, he still learns he overpressured a bird there and it went away. We don't get the pointing opportunity because, you know, it just didn't happen that way. He was on the wrong side of the wind, and that's all right. That's going to happen. Later on, that should be a stop to flush. Right now, it's not, because that's not what we're working on with him. You want to just go get a hand on his collar?
So break down what just happened there, because so many people will be put in that situation to where they're recalling a dog.
Yeah.
They're met with pigeons or some other distraction amongst it. You're dealing with the puppy. How do we go about doing that calmly where we don't screw something up and maybe create a bad association or situation?
I don't want to give dogs corrections where there's no context, right? And so in order for me to know that there's context, I needed to have taught that context. So you'll see later on when we're working on all of the obedience kind of on the back end of the steadiness sequence, so steady to flush, shot, and fall. If the dog is creepy on point, I will just stim them. I'll correct them for that because they've had a long enough time working on the front end of the pointing sequence that it doesn't cause any problems. So I will give dogs corrections with e-collars, with birds on the ground when we're working on the back end. But with this dog just starting this work now, I don't want to do that because he doesn't have a strong enough relationship with this whole thing we're working on right now for me to feel comfortable that he wouldn't get the wrong idea about why that's happening. Once I've taught a dog whoa, and when I do this, I like using a belly collar. So when I teach the dog stem on the belly means set your feet, then I can proof that even with bird scent in front of the dog. And so that's not a problem. But because we haven't done that work with him and the e-collar work that we've done has been for other obedience, I don't want him associating the bird with e-collar stimulation. So when he runs over here to the pigeon loft and is kind of sniffing it and checking it out, there's a lot of draw there from those birds, so I know he's not going to run away. So that's why I just asked Gretchen to go grab his collar. So instead of trying to correct him off of that and have him come back to me, I would rather somebody just go get him in that situation. Now, there are potential other times, like when he runs behind your house or if he's running towards the road, then I got to make a judgment call. Could he potentially have a nose full of bird scent? Yeah, but a dog that gets flattened by a truck isn't any good to anybody, right? So sometimes you make judgment calls there. And I think the rule everybody should get in their head with dog training is everything you do is going to cost you something somewhere else. And so you're just trying to make informed decisions and trade-offs that make sense. So if I correct him, especially when he's really heavily distracted by those birds, the level on the e-collar I would have to use to pull him off of that is going to be very high to be competitive there. And so when we get to those high levels of e-collar, then we don't know if he understands he got corrected for failure to recall, or if he just thinks, I was hanging out by those birds and all of a sudden I got struck by lightning, right? And so I don't want that to happen. I just always want to make sure that the dog understands exactly why things are happening. And so when an unplanned setup occurs, unless there's a really significant safety concern, I'm not going to be touching electronics in particular. It's just too easy to create superstitions with electronics. What I can do, though, since he wants to drag me over to this pigeon pen, is what I was doing before when he didn't want to heel. I'll do leash and collar corrections for this, just so he understands he's not allowed to drag me around. So like when it's physical equipment, I just don't think the dog perceives it the same way. Like he knows I'm holding on to the other end of the leash. You're just less inclined to cause problems this way. Good boy. This dog is not my dog, he's from our kennel, but things like turn signals, I don't think we really have installed here, so we're gonna do what we can. Rainer, this way! I'd really love for you to stop hunting behind us though, buddy. So he wants to be behind us a lot, and that's a thing that we teach quartering in the field and whistles to get the dog to come around in front of us. I don't really have that tool at my disposal right now. There you go. When I approach him, if he lets me get that close, I'm always going to try to come from wide around to the side, right? So I don't think he saw that bird. Just the way that he responded, I don't think he saw it, but we go from no point to now a point with flagging, which is, not ideal. So there's a little bit of lack of self-control there, maybe uncertainty of where the bird is exactly. And so I'd like to do these in a bunch of reps until I get a really clean one. So what I would like to do with him is we keep doing this until I get a really nice point, no flagging on the tail, and then we probably put him up. The trouble we're having here today is it's just hot. This is like the first hot day these dogs have run this season. So,
81 degrees,
they're gonna tank themselves pretty fast. So we'll hose them off, maybe give them water for a minute, and then come out and do 2 more if we can. When people come out and they do like 3 birds and then they go home, and then they do 3 birds and they go home, I think this field work, like this pointing drill, it's really good to train through attrition. And what I mean is let the dog try stuff and fail until they get it right. And then again, for this, like I point and then that bird scent is just staying in my face. And so that's how I know I'm doing the right thing, right? And so we end on a rep like that, but I would do as many of these reps as I can until I get that one. I think when you do 3, you create just enough frustration, particularly in a high drive dog, to make you need even more. I want to kind of continue working through that until I kind of let them try to get it themselves every way they possibly could and fail. And then, you know, we get more point. This is where you see differences in dogs. So a lot of these German breeds, we're having to train pointing a lot more than maybe some of the English breeds that they just have a lot of point built in, you know? You see litters of English pointers and setters sometimes that they're like, as soon as they're standing up and walking around, they're pointing, you know?
Or the 10-month-olds are pointing docking dummies for you.
Yeah, like your dog pointed a docking, yeah. So because we're gonna have to do more work with this, I think these dogs that their first thought is go in and take it out, then I want to let them try that repeatedly until they decide that's not a viable option. If they decide that doesn't work, that is always gonna stick a lot harder and a lot better than if I told them. Hunt them up. I believe you can smell it from that far. I do. Rainer! Rainer! Hey, pup! All right, buddy.
Come on, let's go. All right, just taking old girl down to the pond real quick. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of Nate Zarnota's steadiness program. I know there's a lot of information in there that was a prerequisite, making sure that everybody understood your dog should already know how to hunt before doing this, and that there's really a lot of preparation steps in steadiness to make this the smoothest possible process that we can. In next week's episode, in part 2, we're gonna jump into more of the groundwork and the prep work that goes into the steadiness. Before we go out into the field, we need to teach the concepts and we need to teach the individual parts of steadiness so that they understand whoa means stop, shot means stop, bird means stop. Those individual steps all mean stop. Once you have that under your belt, then we can go out in the field, which you will see in part 3. Thanks for tuning into part 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button down below so you can be sure to catch part 2 next week. And if you are interested, my Patreon patrons have access to all 3 parts currently. So you can sign up with the link down in the show notes, or just go to patreon.com/Gundoggy yourself. And then you have access to all 3 videos right now. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.